What's going on, you guys? Frost here, and I'm back with another guide. This time we'll be talking about Kassadin. The following subjects will be mentioned in this guide: champion description, abilities, leveling order, runes, masteries, the item build, and then off with the lane matchups. If you want to go into a specific subject, you can click on it right now. Champion description. Kassadin is a mage/assassin with a lot of mobility. Besides all this mobility, he also has insane burst damage, and because his E is AoE, this will actually chunk a lot of people at the same time instead of just one person. You can also use all of his mobility to chase down enemies really easily, especially combined with a 90% slow on his max rank E. The main downside about Kassadin is his early game. He doesn't really do much pre-6. If you like a very high mobility burst mage, Kassadin is definitely the champion for you. Kassadin's abilities. His passive, Void Stone. Kassadin ignores unit collision and takes 15% less magic damage. His first ability, Null Sphere. Kassadin fires an orb of void energy at a target enemy, dealing magic damage and interrupting their channeled abilities. The excess energy forms around Kassadin, granting him a shield that absorbs incoming magic damage for 1.5 seconds. This ability is mainly used for poking in lane and farming from range, if you need to pick up like a cannon creep that you can't reach. Also remember to always use the skill on at least a minion if the enemy mid laner goes for poke on you, because you'll be able to shield and reduce some of the damage. Try to constantly use this ability on the enemy in lane because this puts pressure on them. It might not seem like a lot of damage, but if you keep doing it, it will sure stack up quite quickly. His second ability, Nether Blade. Passively, Kassadin's basic attack deals 20 plus 10% of his AP in bonus magic damage. Upon activating this ability, Kassadin's next basic attack gains range, deals additional magic damage, and restores a portion of his missing mana. Quintupled against champions. This skill does reset Kassadin's auto attacks. This skill is great for farming in the early stages of the lane, as it will give you auto attacks that will deal about 90 damage, making last hitting on the turret very easy. Also, you can get quite a good amount of extra damage in on the enemy if you use this as a reset when you rift onto them. His third ability, Force Pulse. This ability works with a stacking system. Whenever anyone close to you, including yourself, casts an ability, you gain a stack. Upon reaching 6 stacks, Kassadin unlocks its ability to be cast once. After that, you have to restack. When activating this ability, Kassadin emits a pulse of void energy, dealing magic damage to all enemies in the cone and slowing them for 1 second. This skill is great for wave clear and dealing damage to enemies when clustered. Also, the skill is insane when versing any type of AD in mid lane, because nearly all of them tend to spam spells a lot, making it very easy for you to get a lot of damage on them whilst pushing the wave. Also, the skill is insanely good in team fights, as you will be able to get it back pretty much instantly, and on max rank it slows for 90%. His fourth ability, Rift Walk. Kassadin blinks to the target location, dealing magic damage to all nearby enemies on arrival. Each subsequent Rift Walk within 15 seconds doubles its cost and increases its damage, stacking up to 4 times. This ability is what makes Kassadin unique. It's pretty much a flash every 2 seconds in the late game, which is obviously very good. Also, the damage this ability does when you stack it up and rift onto an enemy with like 3 or more stacks will pretty much allow you to one-shot anyone on the enemy team. Leveling these abilities. On level 1 I take my Q to be able to poke the enemy in lane, as well as reduce the amount of damage they can do to me if they're AP. When playing against an AD mid, Q level 1 is still the way to go because it's ranged poke and you can also farm with it from ranged if needed. Then on level 2 I will always take my W because of the extra damage on auto attacks, making farming with Kassadin on a turret a lot easier. And you will be turret farming most of the time. Then on level 3 I take either a second point into my Q or a point into my E depending on the matchup. Against any type of AD I'll take a point into my E, but against like a pokey AP mage I'll take a second point into my Q, for better poke and a higher shield to stop their poke. As far as maxing goes, I'll generally max my Q first because most of the time you'll be facing mages in the lane. However, when you're facing any type of AD champion, you want to max your E first, simply because this will deal more damage to them and you'll have no use for the shield from Q anyway. Depending on what you just max, you'll max either Q or E after. And you'll max your W last because you don't really get a lot of leveling this past the first rank. And of course you'll level your R whenever possible. The runes. I go for 9 magic pen marks, 9 scaling health seals, 9 scaling AP glyphs and 3 flat AP quints. I take the 9 magic pen marks because they are simply the best marks to increase your damage on any type of AP character. Then I take 9 scaling health seals, mainly because along with Kassadin's passive, health is the best stat you can have. You can however take flat armor against matchups like Yasuo and Zed, but honestly it's not needed. It does make the lane just a bit easier if you do though. I will personally just play scaling health into every matchup because it just helps you out a lot more than 9 armor does in the later stages of the game. Then I take 9 scaling AP glyphs to help me power up more throughout the game. The AP you will get from this will actually be quite significant once you get 2 items. Now you can also choose to go for scaling CDR glyphs instead. Because, let's be honest, CDR on Kassadin is pretty good. But I just feel like his cooldowns are already low enough to the point that I don't feel like CDR matters all that much. Because a 2-second Rift Walk on level 16, for example, is already ridiculous. So yeah, if you prefer going for the scaling CDR over scaling AP, be my guest. There are arguments to be made for both. And finally, I take 3 flat AP quints just for the extra poke damage in lane, and also these are pretty much the best quints for any type of mage, honestly. The Masteries. I go for 21-9-0 on Kassadin, focusing on all the things that will increase my damage in offense. I do sacrifice 2 points out of my cooldown reduction mastery to be able to get Feast, because the small amount of extra sustain you get from that mastery can actually matter quite a lot for you in the early lane. And since this is Kassadin's weakest point, you might as well make use of this mastery. Taking double-edged sword is good if you know you can dodge some of the poke the enemy throws at you, because the damage increase is really nice, especially when you skill into the later game. However, if you feel like you already take a lot of damage in lane, then I don't advise this mastery because it will just increase the damage you take and will make it harder for you to lane. And I take 9 in defense mainly because the extra health and damage reduction you get from it for Kassadin is really good in the early game. I much prefer this over going utility, for example. Just because utility offers you something, but it just doesn't offer you early lane power, and that's the most important thing. The item build. I have 2 different item builds for Kassadin. The main difference is if you're able to do something in the early game. So, first build will be when you are able to farm easily and you have kill potential, and the second build will be when you have absolutely no chance of killing the enemy and you're just farming under your turret. All that being said, let's get straight into the build number 1. You want to start with a flask, 2 health potions and a mana potion. And of course a warding trinket. This is pretty much the best start you can get on Kassadin, as Doran's rings aren't that great on him because it actually slows him down more than it gives you anything. The first item you want to build is a Rod of Ages. This is the best item you can buy on Kassadin, as it gives him a lot of tankiness as well as very nice amount of mana and health. The best thing to do is, if you can afford to buy it on the first back, is getting the blasting wand of the Rod first. Because this will give you a lot of extra poke and better clearing potential. After Rod you want to build into your boots. There are 2 options for boots on Kassadin. You can either go for some Sorks or you can go for cooldown boots. Either one of these is good, but I personally prefer the Sorks if you're going for this build, because it gives you a lot more kill potential. If you're going for the cooldown reduction boots, I advise you going in tier, because that's actually slower and will make you better in the later stages of the game. After your boots you want to start building into a Zonias. This item is perfect for Kassadin, as the cooldown of your ult is actually lower than the time you are invincible. So you can just use this item, go in, do a lot of damage, then Zonias, and after Zonias you can just Rift Walk back out again. Also, it stops enemies from focusing you down. After Zonias you want to build into a Death Cap. You want to get Death Cap now simply because this will increase your damage by a massive amount. However, if they have stacked up a massive amount of MR, it's actually better to get the Void Staff before you get your Death Cap. If they didn't do this, you want to get yourself a Void Staff right after your Death Cap. And to finish this build off, you want to get yourself either a Lich Bane, if you can get up close to the enemy easily without getting hard CC'd. The reason for this is Lich Bane will allow you to deal an insane amount of damage with just 1 auto attack, as it stacks in your damage with your W. But if they do have a lot of hard CC, it's actually better to get Ludens instead because of the extra bit of burst it gives you and the insane movement speed increase. However, once you get to the very late game, you can also just sell your boots to get either Lich Bane or Ludens. It doesn't really matter. Now, for the build when you have no chance of killing your enemy in lane at all. You want to start with the same way: flask, 2 health potions, 1 mana potion and a warding trinket. After this you want to get yourself a tier as soon as you can. Meaning that when you have the money for it, try backing instantly. But only if this doesn't put you at massive disadvantage. But since you'll be going teleport anyway, this will be no problem at all. Now, after this tier you can just build your Rod as soon as you possibly can. After Rod you want to finish your boots into either Sorks or cooldown reduction boots. This just depends on the same thing, what you prefer honestly. Then after finishing your boots you want to finish your tier into an Archangel Staff. This will instantly offer you a big increase in your damage and more mana. And the more mana you get, the more damage you'll get. The main reason you shouldn't always just go for tier is because it actually slows you down quite a bit. and it will pretty much mean that you can never kill your lane opponent unless they fuck up. So when you're against a lane you can actually kill, it's worth more just going for those kills and building a rod and skipping your tier. After this you want to start building into a death cap. You don't really need to go for Zhonya straight away because you already have your Archangel Staff, and this should be very close to 750 stacks. So you already have a big defensive item in that. Now after your death cap you can either go for Zhonyas if they don't have much magic resist, or you can simply just go for your Void Staff to increase your damage even further. Depending on what you just got, you can just buy Zhonyas or Void Staff now. You just need them both, it's a must. And you can finish this build off by selling your boots for a Lich Bane to pretty much give you another source of burst damage. The lane matchups. On screen right now you can see an overview of pretty much all the lane matchups you can get in the mid lane. I have divided them in two groups, the easy lanes and the hard lanes. You want to look at it this way. Generally in the easy lanes you'll be able to go for the non-tier item variation because you'll have kill pressure on them pretty much throughout the entire lane. All the hard lanes, however, you should consider just going for a tier because it will be very difficult for you to do anything against them in lane. Also, as I mentioned earlier in this video, you should definitely consider always maxing your E against hard lanes because E offers you wave clear. That will mean you'll be able to one-shot a wave and stay away from them once you get a few levels and an item. By the way guys, none of these easy and hard things really matter as long as you know what you're doing on Kassadin. You don't want to take free poke because that will just hurt you a lot. The main thing you can pretty much do to even out all the hard lane is just sit back, take the XP and farm under turret. It's pretty easy with Kassadin. And because you want to sit back and just farm, you can easily get that tier and it will make no difference to you and you'll have a much stronger late game. As far as summoners go for these matchups, I generally will take teleport on Kassadin just because it helps him so much. Because it allows him to back early and get a tier in hard matchups and back faster to keep the pressure on in easy matchups. It also makes it easier for him to pick up kills around the map, which is obviously very useful because once you start snowballing on Kassadin, it's really no stopping him. You can however choose to go for exhaust against most of the hard matchups to get kill pressure on them. But this will cripple you in the later stages of the game because you won't have as much map pressure. Thank you guys so much for watching this guide. If you've enjoyed it or learned anything from it, please remember to hit that like button right below this video. If you want to see more content like this from me, hit that subscribe button and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!